Chapter 25. Springfield, Missouri, June 14th, 1938. Marian 𝘈𝘲𝘪𝘴, tired and in pain, got out of a taxi at City Hospital. Hot wind whipped grit against her ankles as she climbed the steps. The suitcase she lugged was better than her loose wash dress, and so was the mesh evening bag she pressed to her swollen belly. She had 2 quarters and a dime in her bag. She had Francis Dollarhide in her belly. She told the admitting officer her name was Betty Johnson, a lie. She said her husband was a musician, but she did not know his whereabouts, which was true. They put her in the charity section of the maternity ward. She did not look at the patients on either side of her. She looked across the aisle at the soles of feet. In 4 hours, she was taken to the delivery room, where Francis Dollarhide was born. The obstetrician remarked that he looked, quote-unquote, more like a leaf-nosed bat than a baby. Another truth. He was born with bilateral fissures in his upper lip and in his hard and soft palates. The center section of his mouth was unanchored and protruded. His nose was flat. The hospital supervisors decided not to show him to his mother immediately. They waited to see if the infant could survive without oxygen. They put him in a bed at the rear of the infant ward and faced him away from the viewing window. He could breathe, but he could not feed. With his palate cleft, he could not suck. His crying on the first day was not as continuous as that of a heroin-addicted baby, but it was as piercing. By the afternoon of the second day, a thin keening was all he could produce. When the shifts changed at 3 p.m., a wide shadow fell across his bed. Prince Easter Ms., 260 pounds, cleaning woman and aide in the maternity ward, stood looking at him, her arms folded on top of her bosom. In 26 years in the nursery, she had seen about 39,000 infants. This one would live if he ate. Prince Esther had received no instructions from the Lord about letting this infant die. She doubted that the hospital had received any either. She took from her pocket a rubber stopper pierced with a curved glass drawing straw. She pushed the stopper into a bottle of milk. She could hold the baby and support his head in one great hand. She held him to her breast until she knew he felt her heartbeat. Then she flipped him over and popped the tube down his throat. He took about 2 ounces and went to sleep. She said. She put him down and went about her assigned duties with the diaper piles. On the 4th day, the nurses moved Marian 𝘈𝘲𝘪𝘴 to a private room. Hollyhocks left over from a previous occupant were in an enamel pitcher on the washstand. They had held up pretty well. Marian was a handsome girl, and the puffiness was leaving her face. She looked at the doctor when he started talking to her, his hand on her shoulder. She could smell strong soap on his hand, and she thought about the crinkles at the corners of his eyes until she realized what he was saying. Then she closed her eyes and did not open them while they brought the baby in. Finally, she looked. They shut the door when she screamed. Then they gave her a shot. On the 5th day, she left the hospital alone. She didn't know where to go. She could never go home again. Her mother made that clear. Marian 𝘠𝘠𝘪𝘴 counted the steps between the light poles. Each time she passed 3 poles, she sat on the suitcase to rest. At least she had a suitcase. In every town, there were a pawn shop near the bus station. She had learned that traveling with her husband. Springfield in 1938 was not a center for plastic surgery. In Springfield, you wore your face as it was. A surgeon at City Hospital did the best he could for Francis 𝘠𝘠𝘪. First, retracting the front section of his mouth with an elastic band, then closing the clefts in his lip by a rectangular flap technique that was now outmoded. The cosmetic results were not good. The surgeon had trouble to read up on the problem and decided, correctly, that repair of the infant's hard palate should wait until he was 5. To operate sooner would distort the growth of his face. A local dentist volunteered to make an 𝘈𝘳𝘪𝘴𝘵𝘰𝘤𝘳𝘠, which plugged the baby's palate and permitted him to feed without flooding his nose. The infant went to the Springfield Foundling Home for a year and a half, and then to Morgan Lee Memorial Orphanage. Reverend 𝘂𝑏𝘠𝘕𝘠𝘠𝘠𝘠 was head of the orphanage. Brother Buddy called the other boys and girls together and told them that Francis was a hairlip, but they must be careful never to call him a hairlip. Brother Buddy suggested they pray for him. Francis 𝘠𝘠𝘪𝘳's mother learned to take care of herself in the years following his birth. Marian 𝘠𝘠𝘳 first found a job typing in the office of a ward boss in the St. Louis Democratic machine. With his help, she had her marriage to the absent Mr. Trevin annulled. There was no mentioning of a child in the annulment proceedings. She had nothing to do with her mother. "I didn't raise you to slut for that Irish trash," were Mrs. 𝘠𝘠𝘳's parting words to Marian when she left home with Trevin. Marian's ex-husband called her once at the office. Sober and pious, he told her he had been saved and wanted to know if he, Marian, and the child he quote-unquote never had the joy of knowing might make a new life together. He sounded broke. Marian told him the child was born dead, and she hung up. He showed up drunk at her boarding house with his suitcase. When she told him to go away, he observed that it was her fault the marriage failed and the child was stillborn. He expressed doubt that the child was his. In a rage, Marian 𝘠𝘠𝘳 told Michael Trevin exactly what he had fathered and told him he was welcome to it. She reminded him that there were 2 cleft palates in the Trevin family. She put him in the street and told him never to call her again. He didn't. But years later, drunk and brooding over Marian's rich new husband and her fine life, he did call Marian's mother. He told Mrs. 𝘠𝘠𝘳 about the deformed child and said her snag teeth proved the hereditary fault lay with the 𝘠𝘠𝘳s. A week later, a Kansas City streetcar cut Michael Trevin in 2. When Trevin told Mrs. 𝘠𝘠𝘳 that Marian had a son, a hidden one, She sat up most of the night. Tall and lean in her rocker, Grandmother 𝘠𝘠𝘰𝘠 stared into the fire. Toward dawn, she began a slow and purposeful rocking. Somewhere upstairs in the big house, a cracked voice called out of sleep. The floor above Grandmother 𝘠𝘠𝘰 creaked as someone shuffled toward the bathroom. A heavy thump on the ceiling, someone falling, and the cracked voice called in pain. Grandmother 𝘠𝘠𝘰 never took her eyes off the fire. She rocked faster, and in time, the calling stopped. Near the end of his 5th year, Francis 𝘠𝘠𝘰 had his first and only visitor at the orphanage. He was sitting in the thick reek of the cafeteria when an older boy came for him and told him to be taken to Brother Buddy's office. The lady waiting for Brother Buddy was tall and middle-aged, dredged in powder, her hair in a tight bun. Her face was stark white. There were touches of yellow in the gray hair and in the eyes and teeth. What struck Francis, what he would always remember, she smiled with pleasure when she saw his face. That had never happened before. No one would ever do it. "This is your grandmother," Brother Buddy said. "Hello," she said. Brother Buddy wiped his own mouth with a long hand. "Say hello. Go ahead." Francis had learned to say some things by occluding his nostrils with his upper lip, but it did not have much occasion for hello. "Loho" was the best he could do. Grandmother seemed even more pleased with him. "Can you say grandmother?" "Try to say grandmother," Brother Buddy said. The pulse of G defeated him. Francis strangled easily on tears. A red wasp buzzed and tapped against the ceiling. "Never mind," his grandmother said. "I'll just bet you can say your name. I just know a big boy like you can say his name. Say it for me." The child's face brightened. The big boys had helped him with this. He wanted to be pleased. He collected himself. "Cunt face," he said. Three days later, Grandma 𝘠𝘠𝘰 called for Francis at the orphanage and took him home with her. She began at once to help him with his speech. They concentrated on a single word. It was mother. Within 2 years of the annulment, Marion 𝘠𝘠𝘰 met and married Howard Vogue, a successful lawyer with solid connections to the St. Louis machine and what was left of the old Pendergast machine in Kansas City. Vogue was a widower with 3 young children, an affable, ambitious man 15 years older than Marion 𝘠𝘠𝘰. He hated nothing in the world except the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, which had singed his feathers in the voter registration scandal of 1936 and blasted the attempt in 1940 by the St. Louis machine to steal the governorship. By 1943, Vogue's star was rising again. He was a brewery candidate for the state legislature and was mentioned as a possible delegate to the upcoming state constitutional convention. Marian was a useful and attractive hostess, and Vogue brought her a handsome, half-timbered house on Olive Street that was perfect for entertaining. Francis Dolarhyde had lived with his grandmother for a week when she took him there. Grandmother had never seen her daughter's house. The maid who answered the door did not know her. "I'm Mrs. Dolarhyde," she said, barging past the servant. Her slip was showing 3 inches in the back. She led Francis into a big living room with a pleasant fire. "Who is it, Viola?" A woman's voice from upstairs. Grandmother cupped Francis' face in her hand. He could smell the cold leather glove. An urgent whisper. "Go see Mother, Francis. Go see Mother. Run." He shrank from her, twisting on the tines of her eyes. "Go see Mother. Run!" She gripped his shoulders and marched him toward the stairs. He trotted up to the landing and looked back down at her. She motioned upward with her chin. Up to the strange hallway toward the open bedroom door. Mother was seated at her dressing table, checking her makeup in a mirror framed with lights. She was getting ready for a political rally, and too much rouge wouldn't do. Her back was to the door. "Mother," Francis piped, as he had been taught. He tried hard to get it right. "Mother." She saw him in the mirror then. "If you're looking for Ned, he isn't home from Mother." He came into the heartless light. Marian heard her mother's voice downstairs demanding tea. Her eyes widened, and she sat very still. She did not turn around. She turned out the makeup lights and vanished from the mirror. In the darkened room, she gave a single low keening that ended in a sob. It might have been for herself, or it might have been for him. Grandmother took Francis to all the political rallies after that and explained who he was and where he came from. She had him say hello to everyone. They did not work on hello at home. Mr. Vaux lost the election by 1,800 votes.